The moment I realized what was happening, my heart sank. Imagine waking up one day and finding out that a massive shopping mall, worth millions of dollars, was being built right on your own farmland. But here's the catch. I never gave permission. No warning, no conversation, nothing. The HOA, that seemingly ordinary group managing our neighborhood, had just started construction on my land, without even realizing the legal mess they were stepping into. It sounds unbelievable, right? A homeowners association, which usually only handles small things like lawn rules or parking restrictions, suddenly deciding to build a $12 million mall on private farmland? That's exactly what happened to me. And at first, it felt like I had no power. Watching the construction crews bulldoze through fields that had been in my family for generations was crushing. It was like losing a piece of my history right before my eyes. What made it worse was how confident they seemed. They acted like they owned the land, as if my farmland was just part of their playground. But I knew something they didn't. I knew that beneath the surface of this conflict was a complex web of property rights and legal protections that would soon turn the tables. But at that moment, all I could do was stand back and wonder how this could possibly be happening. It's easy to think that something like this couldn't happen to you, that HOAs don't have that kind of power. Most people imagine them as groups that handle community pool schedules or lawn maintenance disputes. But in some places, HOAs have grown in size and influence. They control large swaths of land and manage not only houses but commercial developments too. When that happens, the line between neighborly oversight and outright overreach blurs, sometimes dangerously. The fact that this was happening on farmland added another layer to the story. Farmland isn't just any piece of property. It's often protected by specific laws meant to preserve agriculture and prevent unwanted development. It's land that supports families, communities, and sometimes entire economies. When someone tries to build on it without permission, it's not just a real estate dispute. It's a fight for the land's very identity and future. For years, my family had worked that land, passed down from one generation to the next. It wasn't just dirt and crops. It was legacy, knowing that made it all the more painful to watch heavy machinery rip through the fields, clearing way for concrete and steel. The mall wasn't just an eyesore. It was a symbol of someone else trying to erase my family's connection to this land. But here's the thing, the HOA wasn't malicious. They didn't set out to steal my land or cause harm. From their perspective, they were just making progress on a project that would benefit the community, or so they thought. They believed they had the right to use the land, probably assuming I wouldn't notice or wouldn't fight back. This is the kind of assumption that leads to big mistakes, especially when legal boundaries are crossed. And this is where it gets interesting, because while the HOA thought they had the upper hand, I had been preparing for this kind of situation for a long time. I wasn't going to let decades of family history be bulldozed without a fight. What they didn't know was that I had carefully put legal protections in place, tools that most people don't think about until it's too late. You might wonder what kind of legal protections could stop a multi-million-dollar construction project in its tracks. It's not always about fancy lawyers or courtroom battles. Sometimes it's about knowing the right laws and having the right paperwork. Things like zoning restrictions, easements, and special deed clauses that limit how land can be used. These aren't everyday terms for most people, but they can be incredibly powerful. As the mall started rising, I began piecing together how I could use those protections to challenge the HOA's actions. It was a matter of digging into land records, reading through contracts, and understanding local regulations. Every detail mattered, and every small victory brought me closer to turning the situation around. What's amazing is how often people underestimate the power of their own property rights. We live our daily lives thinking our land is just land, but behind are rules and agreements that protect owners from things like this. It's easy to get overwhelmed when faced with big organizations or groups like HOAs, but knowledge is the real key. In the next moments and days after the construction began, the tension grew. The HOA was pushing forward, confident in their actions. But I was ready, armed with legal knowledge and determination. This wasn't just a fight about land anymore. It was a battle to protect a family legacy and to remind others that no matter how powerful a group seems, they can't just take what's not theirs. If you ever think an HOA or any organization can steamroll over your property, Think again. There's a world of laws and protections designed exactly for moments like this. The question is, do you know them? Because if you don't, you might find yourself in a situation where you're watching your own land disappear, wondering how it all went so wrong. But this story isn't just about loss or conflict. It's about standing up, learning, and using the tools you have to protect what matters most. The mall might have looked unstoppable, but little did the HOA know, they were about to walk right into a trap they never saw coming. And that trap? Well, that's a story all on its own. Farmland is more than just open space. It's a patch of earth tied deeply to laws that protect it from sudden changes. Unlike regular residential property, farmland often comes with layers of legal shields designed to keep it safe from development that could harm its natural use. When people hear farm, they might picture crops, tractors, or wide fields, but behind that simple image lies a complex network of rules, restrictions, and agreements. These laws aren't just for farmers. They're for anyone who owns land and wants to keep it that way. One important thing about farmland is zoning. Zoning laws tell us how land can be used. Some areas are zoned specifically for farming, which means building a shopping mall or commercial complex. There is usually against the rules. Zoning protects farmers from having their land suddenly surrounded by stores and parking lots, which can hurt both the land and the community's way of life. In my case, my farmland was clearly zoned as agricultural, meaning the HOA shouldn't have been able to start construction at all. Then there are property deeds, which act like contracts for land ownership. Deeds often contain special conditions, like limits on how the land can be used or who can build on it. These conditions might seem like tiny details in a stack of paperwork, but they can be the difference between losing your land and keeping it safe. In my situation, the deed included clauses that explicitly prevented commercial development without the owner's consent. The HOA either missed these details or chose to ignore them. Another layer is easements. Easements grant certain rights to use a part of property for specific reasons, like access roads or utility lines. But they don't give free rein to build whatever you want. Sometimes, easements can limit how and where construction happens, especially if it might harm the land or block access. These legal tools are common in farmland to ensure the land remains usable for its intended purpose. People outside the farming community often don't realize how tightly land use is regulated. It's not as simple as, I own it, so I can do anything with it. Farmland is protected because it serves essential functions: food production, preserving green space, and maintaining natural habitats. Governments, both local and state, put strict rules in place to make sure farmland stays farmland, not shopping centers or parking lots. Homeowners associations, on the other hand, usually deal with residential neighborhoods. Their power is mostly about community rules. What color you can paint your house, where you can park, or whether you can have a pet. They aren't supposed to have authority over huge tracts of farmland, especially when it comes to commercial developments worth millions. But in some cases, HOAs overstep. They push boundaries, thinking their rules apply everywhere on or near their property. This can happen because HOAs sometimes manage large areas that include not just homes but also open land. When that open land happens to be farmland, things get complicated. The HOA may see it as common area or property they can control, but legally, that land could still belong to private owners with rights protected by zoning laws and deed restrictions. In my case, the HOA seemed unaware of how the laws protected my farmland. They didn't stop to check the zoning or read the deed closely. Instead, they rushed into construction, thinking the land was theirs to develop. That was their biggest mistake. Farmland laws don't just protect the landowner. They also protect the community. Commercial development in the wrong place can cause problems like traffic, pollution, and loss of wildlife habitats. That's why these rules exist, to balance growth with preservation. When the HOA ignored these protections, they weren't just breaking rules. They were risking the health and safety of the entire neighborhood. At the same time, farmland ownership isn't a free-for-all. As an owner, I had responsibilities too. I had to keep the land maintained, pay property taxes, and ensure it met the legal requirements for agricultural use. This meant that my legal protections weren't accidental. They were the result of careful planning and following regulations. What many people don't know is that owning farmland can give you powerful tools to stop unwanted development. It's not just about having land. It's about knowing your rights and using them. These tools can include filing complaints with zoning boards, applying for agricultural exemptions, or even setting up special covenants in a deed that limit how the land can be used. The problem is that most people don't realize these protections until it's too late. When someone tries to build something illegal on their property, they scramble to find solutions, often facing expensive and slow legal battles. I was lucky because I had already laid down these protections, and when the HOA started building the mall, I was ready. This knowledge turned the situation around. Instead of being powerless while the mall rose on my land, I had the legal ammunition to fight back. It's a powerful reminder that understanding land use laws isn't just for lawyers or farmers. It's for anyone who cares about protecting what's theirs. The more I learned about these laws, the more I saw how many people fall victim to similar situations. HOAs and developers sometimes push boundaries, hoping landowners don't know their rights. It's easy to feel overwhelmed or intimidated when facing big organizations with money and power. But farmland laws and zoning regulations are there for a reason. They're designed to protect people like me, and maybe like you, from losing their property or seeing it turn into something unwanted. Understanding these rules means you can act early and keep control of your land. So, farmland isn't just about dirt and crops. It's a protected piece of real estate with special rules. And when someone tries to build a multi-million-dollar mall on that land without permission, those rules can become the strongest defense you have. When the HOA started breaking ground on my farmland, I knew it wasn't just a simple mistake. They had crossed a line, one that came with serious legal consequences. But how did I find out about what they were doing so quickly? It all began when neighbors started calling, worried about trucks and machines rolling through fields that had been quiet for years. I rushed over and saw the truth with my own eyes. Huge concrete foundations going up where crops once grew. At first, I tried to speak with the HOA leaders. I thought maybe it was a misunderstanding. I explained the boundaries, showed them the deed, and mentioned the zoning restrictions. But they brushed me off, acting like those details didn't matter. That's when I realized they had no clue just how deep they were digging themselves into trouble. I had spent years preparing for potential conflicts like this. It wasn't luck. It was careful planning. Farmland isn't just about planting seeds. It's about planting protections. I'd worked with a lawyer to set up legal safeguards that would protect my land from unwanted development. Things like restrictive covenants in the deed, which put limits on what could be built or changed. Also, I made sure the zoning classification was up to date and enforced. When the HOA started building, they triggered every one of those protections. I immediately contacted my lawyer and started filing paperwork to stop the construction. We sent formal cease and desist letters, which told the HOA they were acting illegally. But, as you might expect, the HOA didn't just back down. They argued that they had community approval and that the land was open for development. It was a classic case of he said, she said, but the facts were on my side. The fight wasn't easy. HOAs have resources and influence. They brought in their own lawyers, tried to sway local officials, and pushed forward with construction despite warnings. But every time they moved a step forward, I and my legal team pushed back harder. We showed officials the deed restrictions and zoning laws. We gathered expert testimony on the environmental impact and the value of the farmland. This wasn't just a property dispute. It was about protecting an entire community's heritage. I remember sitting in meetings with city planners and zoning boards, explaining why the HOA's project was illegal. I had charts, maps, and legal documents, and I made it clear this wasn't a matter of opinion. The laws were on my side. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Officials started asking tough questions. They halted some permits. The HOA's plan faced delays that no amount of money could fix. But the HOA didn't give up easily. At one point, they tried to start construction overnight, hoping to avoid attention. They brought in heavy machinery under cover of darkness and began pouring concrete foundations. It felt like a sneaky move to outsmart the system, but it only made things worse for them. The local community noticed, complaints flooded in, and enforcement agencies stepped in quickly. This whole process taught me just how important it is to stay vigilant. You can't assume that because you own land, others will respect your rights. Sometimes it's a fight, a legal battle that requires patience, knowledge, and the right support. The HOA learned this the hard way during a legal battle. I also discovered that HOAs often misunderstand their own power. They think they can control everything inside and around their communities. But property law draws clear lines. I realize many HOAs don't fully understand or respect zoning restrictions and deed limitations, especially when it comes to farmland or commercial development. They overreach, assuming silence or ignorance means consent. On my side, I had something more valuable than money or influence: the truth backed by law. Every clause in the deed, every local ordinance, every legal precedent became a weapon against the HOA's project. We documented everything meticulously: emails, construction dates, permit applications, building a rock-solid case. The most satisfying moments were when the courts acknowledged these facts. Judges granted injunctions that stopped construction immediately. Those legal orders didn't just pause the mall. They sent a message. You can't bulldoze your way through someone else's property and expect to get away with it. What surprised me was how quickly the HOA's confidence turned into panic. They had to halt their project, cancel contracts, and face heavy fines. Many homeowners started questioning the HOA board's decisions. The community became divided, and trust eroded fast. Meanwhile, my farmland remained untouched, a quiet testament to standing up for what's right. The legal trap I prepared turned out to be more powerful than anyone imagined. It wasn't about revenge. It was about respect for property and the rule of law. This battle also made me realize how important it is to know your rights before problems even arise. If I hadn't taken steps to protect my land legally, I might have lost everything. It's easy to think that conflicts like this won't happen to you, but they do. When they do, being prepared makes all the difference. Through all the chaos, I stayed focused on the goal: protecting my family's land and legacy. That meant being persistent, staying calm, and trusting the legal system. It also meant educating neighbors and other landowners about their rights and what they could do if faced with similar situations. This experience changed how I see property ownership. It's not just about having a deed. It's about knowing the power behind it. It's about being ready to defend your land against anyone who thinks they can take it without consequence. If there's one thing I learned, it's that legal battles aren't just fought in courtrooms. They're fought with knowledge, preparation, and determination. The HOA may have thought they were winning when the machine started rolling, but they didn't count on the trap I'd set. And that trap? It's the difference between losing everything and holding on to what matters most. As the legal battle unfolded, the tension between me and the HOA only grew. It wasn't just about property anymore. It was about standing up to a powerful group that believed it could do whatever it wanted simply because it had money and influence. The mall project wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of how people sometimes try to take what doesn't belong to them, thinking the law won't catch up. I remember one of the first court hearings vividly. The HOA's lawyers came prepared with stacks of paperwork, confident and ready to argue that the land was theirs to develop. But I had something better: truth backed by solid evidence. My lawyer and I presented documents showing the zoning laws, the deed restrictions, and expert reports that highlighted the importance of preserving farmland. Each piece of evidence chipped away at their case, revealing how their entire project was built on shaky ground. The courtroom felt tense, charged with more than just legal arguments. It was a clash between community rights and overreach, between careful planning and reckless development. Every time the HOA tried to push their agenda, the judge reminded them that property laws aren't something to be taken lightly. That was a turning point, not just for the case, but for me personally. It showed that no matter how big or rich someone is, the law can protect the little guy if you know how to fight. Outside the courtroom, the community started to rally around me. Neighbors who once didn't pay attention to farmland issues began showing up at meetings and voicing support. Some shared stories of similar experiences with HOAs or developers trying to push through projects without proper approval. It was clear that this wasn't just my fight. It was something many people feared but didn't know how to stop. Social media played a big role too. I shared updates, explaining what was happening in simple terms, helping others understand the legal protections involved. The story spread, attracting attention from local news outlets and community groups. Suddenly, the mall project wasn't just an HOA issue, it was a public matter. With that support, more pressure fell on HOA. Their reputation took a hit as people questioned their leadership and decision-making. Homeowners started demanding answers, asking why the board had allowed such a risky project to move forward without proper checks. This internal conflict added another layer to the story, showing how even powerful organizations can crumble from within when they lose the trust of those they represent. During the legal proceedings, new facts kept emerging. It turned out the HOA hadn't done the necessary environmental impact studies, which are required before building large commercial structures. Ignoring those requirements was a serious oversight, giving us another strong point in court. The judge took notice, and the pressure mounted on the HOA to comply with all regulations or face harsher consequences. At one point, the HOA tried to settle out of court, hoping to avoid further damage. They offered a deal to buy a small part of my land or pay compensation to move forward. But I knew this wasn't just about money. Accepting their offer would mean giving up control of the land and sending the wrong message to other landowners facing similar threats. I refused. The battle dragged on for months, but every delay worked in my favor. Construction stopped multiple times due to court orders, inspections, and permit issues. The mall that once seemed unstoppable slowly ground to a halt. The contractors pulled out, and the HOA's ambitious plans became a cautionary tale. What surprised me most was how many lessons I learned along the way. I discovered the importance of building a strong legal team, one that could anticipate moves and counterattacks from the HOA. I realized that patience is crucial because these battles aren't won overnight. And I learned that being open and honest with the community builds support that can turn the tide. One of the most powerful moments came when the judge issued a permanent injunction against the mall construction on my farmland. That ruling didn't just protect my property. It sent a message to HOAs everywhere. No group, no matter how big, is above the law. The HOA board members face consequences too. Some resign under pressure, while others face fines for violating regulations. The community began demanding reforms to prevent similar issues in the future. It was a hard lesson for everyone involved. Looking back, the legal trap I set was more than just paperwork. It was a shield built on knowledge, persistence, and an unwillingness to let injustice happen. The mall project might have seemed like a done deal, but it was actually a ticking time bomb for the HOA. And while the battle was tough, it showed me the power of knowing your rights and standing up for them. It reminded me that even when faced with overwhelming odds, the law can be a powerful tool to protect what's yours. It's not just about winning a court case. It's about defending your family's legacy and the land that means so much. The experience also opened my eyes to the need for others to understand these protections. Far too many people assume their property is vulnerable, but with the right knowledge, anyone can protect themselves. It's a lesson I'm passionate about sharing. At the end of the day, the HOA thought they could push me aside and build that mall without consequences. They didn't realize the legal foundation beneath my farmland was stronger than any concrete slab they poured. The trap was set long before the bulldozers arrived, and it worked exactly as planned. The aftermath of the court's decision sent ripples far beyond my own property. It wasn't just about me winning a battle. It was about setting a precedent that others could learn from. When the HOA's mall project was halted permanently, it opened eyes in neighboring communities. Landowners began to understand that they, too, had rights and tools to protect their land against overreach. Suddenly, conversations shifted from frustration to empowerment. People started reaching out, asking questions about zoning laws, deed restrictions, and how to secure their properties. I realized how important it was to share my story and the strategies I used. It wasn't about boasting or revenge. It was about educating others so they wouldn't fall victim to the same kind of legal battle. Farmland isn't just dirt and crops. It's a legacy, and protecting that legacy requires knowing the rules of the game. One thing I found striking was how many landowners didn't realize that HOAs could try to overstep their boundaries. They often think of HOAs as small, neighborhood groups concerned with lawn care and parking rules. But When an HOA suddenly tries to develop millions of dollars worth of commercial property on someone else's farmland, that's a whole different level of conflict. It shows how power can be abused when oversight is weak or knowledge is lacking. I also learned about the importance of community vigilance. The neighbors who first called me about the construction were crucial in raising the alarm. Without their eyes and voices, the project might have gone unnoticed until it was too late. It made me appreciate how collective awareness can protect everyone's interests. It's a reminder that property rights don't exist in a vacuum. They're part of the community fabric. Another revelation was the complexity of the legal system surrounding land use. Zoning laws, deed covenants, environmental regulations. All these layers can seem overwhelming at first, but they are designed to protect property owners and communities from reckless development. The key is to understand how these rules fit together and where your rights begin and end. The experience also highlighted how important it is to document everything. From the moment I suspected the HOA's plans, I kept detailed records, photos, emails, permits, legal notices. This evidence became critical in court and made it impossible for the HOA to deny their actions or claim ignorance. It's a simple step that can make a huge difference if you ever need to defend your property. Throughout the process, I kept reminding myself that patience was just as important as persistence. Legal battles aren't quick. They're long, frustrating, and often feel like a test of endurance. But staying focused and calm, even when the HOA tried to push back or intimidate, was vital. It's easy to get discouraged, but the law rewards those who stand firm. I also gained a new respect for the role of local government and regulatory agencies. These bodies aren't just bureaucratic hurdles. They serve an important function in enforcing zoning laws and protecting community interests. When the HOA ignored these rules, officials stepped in to stop them. It showed me that while the legal system might seem slow, it can be effective when used properly. The financial side of things also became clear during the fight. HOAs sometimes underestimate the cost of a legal development. Fines, legal fees, delays, and lost trust can quickly add up. For the HOA in my case, the price of pushing the mall project was far higher than they expected. It's a cautionary tale for any organization thinking about cutting corners or ignoring property laws. As the dust settled, I thought about what the future holds for my farmland and for others like me. Protecting land isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing responsibility. Laws can change, new developments can arise, and threats can come from unexpected directions. Staying informed and connected to legal resources is crucial. I also realized how much power knowledge gives to landowners. Farmland isn't just valuable because of its size or productivity. It's valuable because of the legal rights that come with ownership. When those rights are understood and respected, they become a fortress against unwanted change. This whole journey transformed my relationship with my land. It became more than a piece of property. It became a symbol of resilience and justice. The farmland that once seemed vulnerable now stand protected, not just by fences, but by law and community support. Sharing this story is my way of giving back. I want others to know that no matter how big the opponent or how complicated the laws, there is hope. With the right preparation and determination, you can protect your land and your legacy. The battle with the HOA was tough, but it proved one thing. When you stand up for your rights and understand the rules, you can face even the most powerful forces and come out victorious. Farmland may seem quiet and peaceful, but it holds stories of strength, courage, and the fight to keep what truly belongs to you. The fight wasn't just about the land or the mall anymore. It became something bigger. It became about standing up to those who assume power means they can take whatever they want, whenever they want. I saw firsthand how easy it is for an HOA or any organization to push boundaries when they think no one is watching. That's why knowledge and vigilance are so important. They turn the tables. One of the most eye-opening parts of this whole experience was how the HOA underestimated the power of community and legal protections. They thought money and pressure could force me to give up my land. But they didn't count on the depth of preparation and the will to fight back. Property laws exist to protect people from exactly this kind of overreach, but only if you know how to use them. During the process, I became much more than just a landowner fighting for my property. I became a voice for others who might not realize their rights until it's too late. I started talking to other farmers, homeowners, and even small business owners, sharing what I learned. It was clear that many people felt powerless when facing big organizations or developments. But I wanted them to know that power lies in knowledge and action. Another thing that struck me was the emotional toll this battle took. It wasn't easy waking up every day wondering if my family's legacy was slipping away. The stress, the uncertainty, and the constant legal wrangling were exhausting. Yet, that pressure also made me more determined. I realized that fighting for your land is also about fighting for your peace of mind, your heritage, and your future. I also noticed how important it was to have a solid support system. My lawyer was crucial, of course, but so were neighbors and friends who showed up at meetings, helped gather information, and stood by me when things got tough. Property disputes can feel isolating, but community support makes a huge difference. It reminds you that you're not alone. The HOA's failed attempt to build that $12 million mall on my farmland became a clear lesson on how legal groundwork is more powerful than any bulldozer. It's about preparation, understanding your rights, and being willing to stand your ground no matter what. Farmland isn't just about farming. It's about preserving history, protecting the environment, and securing a future for generations to come. The legal trap I set wasn't a quick fix. It was years of careful planning coming to fruition when I needed it most. It showed me that owning land isn't passive, it's active. You have to protect it, defend it, and sometimes fight tooth and nail. That fight can feel overwhelming, but it's worth it. Looking back, I realize how many misconceptions people have about HOAs and their power. They aren't above the law, and they don't get to decide the fate of others' properties on a whim. The legal system exists to hold them accountable, but only if landowners use it wisely. That's why education and awareness are so vital. One of the most surprising outcomes was how the HOA's own homeowners started to question the board. Their trust eroded as the truth came out about the illegal mall construction. It created a rift within the community, showing that even organizations can face consequences from within if they lose sight of the law and respect for property rights. In the end, this experience changed how I see property ownership. It's not just about having a deed or a title. It's about being an informed guardian of that land. Every parcel has a story, and every story deserves protection. You can't take ownership lightly, because others might try to take it from you. This journey also taught me the value of persistence. Legal battles can drag on, and it's easy to get discouraged when progress feels slow. But every small victory, every document filed, every court hearing attended brings you closer to protecting what's yours. The law isn't perfect, but it can be powerful if you stay committed. I also learned how important it is to keep a level head. Emotions run high in disputes like this, but staying calm and focused helps you make better decisions. When the HOA tried to intimidate me or push through underhanded tactics, I reminded myself that the best weapon is a clear mind and solid facts. Finally, I realized that this story isn't just mine. It belongs to anyone who owns land and wants to protect it. Farmland, homes, businesses, they all need defenders. And sometimes, standing up for your property means standing up to powerful groups willing to break rules and ignore rights. The fight over that $12 million mall wasn't just about stopping construction. It was about proving that property owners have power when they understand the law and refuse to back down. It was about protecting a legacy and showing that no matter how big the threat, you can fight back and win. The months following the court's ruling were filled with reflection and new challenges. While the immediate threat of the mall building on my farmland was over, the battle had exposed deeper issues about land ownership and community control. I realized that this fight was just one example of a larger problem, how organizations like HOAs can sometimes push their agendas without fully considering the consequences for individual landowners and the community at large. I started to pay more attention to how HOAs operate and the kind of authority they actually have. Many people think that HOAs are just about keeping up appearances, making sure lawns are mowed and rules are followed. But when you dig deeper, you find that some HOAs stretch their power into areas that affect property values, land use, and even the environment. This overreach can lead to conflicts like mine, where a community group tries to develop land it doesn't actually own or control. One thing that became clear was the importance of transparency and accountability in HOAs. In my case, The board didn't communicate openly with homeowners or with me about their plans. They assumed silence meant agreement, but that couldn't have been further from the truth. Lack of transparency breeds distrust, and in situations involving millions of dollars in property rights, that distrust can lead to serious consequences. As the news of the legal victory spread, I was approached by landowners from neighboring areas who faced similar issues. Some had HOAs try and change land use without proper approval. Others were dealing with unauthorized construction projects. These stories showed me that this wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a pattern, and patterns need to be broken. Education became a key focus. I began organizing informal talks and sharing resources about property rights, zoning laws, and how to challenge illegal developments. It was rewarding to see others gain confidence in understanding their rights and knowing what steps to take if they face threats. Knowledge truly is power, and it's contagious when people realize they don't have to accept illegal or unfair actions quietly. The environmental aspect of the case also opened my eyes. The farmland isn't just soil and crops. It's part of a delicate ecosystem that supports wildlife, helps manage water flow, and contributes to the overall health of the region. The HOA's plan for a massive mall ignored these environmental impacts, which would have caused long-term damage to the creek and surrounding land. This added another layer of responsibility for landowners, protecting not just their property, but the environment around it. Local government officials started to take note, too. The case highlighted gaps in enforcement and oversight that allowed the HOA's project to move forward as far as it did. It was clear that stronger regulations and better communication between HOA's landowners and city planners were needed to prevent similar conflicts. Advocating for these changes became another mission. The legal victory also showed me how important it is to have patience and persistence. Some people expect quick results when fighting land disputes, but the reality is often drawn out, complicated, and frustrating. It can feel like hitting walls over and over. But each small step, filing a complaint, attending hearings, gathering evidence, builds a stronger defense. Through this process, I developed a deeper respect for the legal professionals who guide landowners through these battles. Their knowledge and experience are invaluable, especially when facing well-funded opponents like HOAs. Finding the right legal team can make all the difference between winning and losing. The community itself was forever changed. The HOA board faced criticism and calls for reform. Homeowners demanded more say in decisions and greater transparency. Some board members resigned, replaced by people who understood the importance of respecting property rights and following the law. It was a reminder that organizations are only as good as the people who lead them. On a personal level, the fight reinforced my connection to land. It's more than just a place to farm or a piece of property on paper. It's a part of my family's history and future. Protecting it meant protecting memories, values, and a way of life that can't be easily replaced. As I look ahead, I know this won't be the last challenge. Land ownership comes with responsibilities, and sometimes conflicts. But armed with knowledge, legal protections, and community support, I feel ready to face whatever comes next. Sharing this story isn't just about what happened to me. It's a warning and a guide for anyone who owns land. Know your rights. Stay alert. Don't be afraid to stand up when those rights are threatened. Because when you do, you're not just protecting property. You're preserving a legacy. Every step of this journey has taught me that property ownership is an active role. It's about vigilance, education, and courage. And no matter the size of the opponent or the complexity of the legal system, standing firm and knowing your rights can turn the tide. The fight against the HOA's mall wasn't just a battle over land. It was a fight for justice, respect, and the future of a community that values what's truly important. It showed that even the biggest threats can be stopped with determination and the right tools. The fight over my farmland didn't just change my life. It changed how I view community, power, and responsibility. When the HOA thought they could bulldoze a $12 million mall onto my land without consequences, they didn't realize they were stepping into a storm they couldn't control. That storm was built on years of careful planning, understanding the law, and a refusal to back down. What surprised me most was how the HOA underestimated the importance of respect. Respect for property, for laws, and for the people who live in a community. They assumed that money and influence would be enough to bulldoze through every obstacle. But the truth is, respect is a foundation of any lasting community. Without it, even the most powerful organizations crumble. This experience showed me that power isn't just about financial resources. Real power comes from knowledge, preparation, and the support of others who believe in justice. When I began this fight, I was just one person with a piece of land. But with the right legal team and a community that rallied around me, I became a force the HOA couldn't ignore. I started to see my farmland differently, not just as an asset, but as a responsibility. Protecting it meant preserving a piece of history and a way of life. It was about more than fences and fields. It was about the future of a community that values open space, natural beauty, and heritage. The legal battle also opened my eyes to how easily communities can be divided when misinformation spreads. The HOA tried to paint me as the villain, someone standing in the way of progress. But progress without ethics or respect isn't progress at all. It's destruction disguised as development. I realize the importance of clear communication. Being transparent and honest with neighbors and stakeholders builds trust. When people understand what's happening, they're more likely to support protecting land and property rights. The silence and secrecy around the mall project only fueled suspicion and opposition. Throughout the fight, the environment became a powerful ally. Farmland isn't just about crops. It's about the ecosystem, the wildlife, and the balance of nature. The mall would have disrupted that balance, turning green fields into concrete and disrupting natural water flows. Protecting the environment became intertwined with protecting the land itself. The legal system, though slow and sometimes frustrating, proved to be a crucial tool. It wasn't just about winning in court. It was about making sure the rules were followed, that no one was above the law. The judge's decision reinforced that property rights and environmental protections matter, no matter the size of the project or the wealth behind it. I also learned how important it is to stay calm under pressure. The HOA tried every tactic, from legal threats to public relations campaigns, to wear me down. But keeping a clear head helped me focus on what really mattered: the facts, the law, and the community support. One of the most satisfying moments was seeing the community come together. Neighbors who never spoke before started attending meetings, asking questions, and standing up for their own properties. It reminded me that even the smallest voices can make a difference when they unite. This battle gave me a new perspective on what it means to own land. It's not just about possession. It's about stewardship, taking care of the land, defending it, and ensuring it remains a place for future generations. Ownership carries a responsibility that goes beyond signing a deed. The HOA's failed mall project became a symbol of what can happen when greed overrides community values. It was a warning to others who might think they can bypass rules and rights for quick profits. The cost of ignoring those protections is higher than anyone expected. As time passed, I found myself more involved in local issues, advocating for stronger protections and more transparent governance. The fight didn't end in the courtroom. It continued in city council meetings, community forums, and discussions about the future development in our area. I also realized how many people feel powerless when facing large organizations or complex legal systems. That's why sharing my story matters. It's not just about what happened to me. It's about showing others that they can stand up, that they can win, and that their rights are worth defending. This journey taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's pushing forward despite it. When the HOA came with bulldozers and legal threats, I felt fear, but I also felt a stronger drive to protect what was mine. That drive kept me moving, step by step, toward victory. The land I fought for is more than just soil and crops now. It's a testament to perseverance, justice, and the power of community. It stands as proof that even when faced with powerful opponents, standing up for what's right can change the course of history. Looking ahead, I know challenges will come again, but with every battle, I grow stronger, wiser, and more determined. Farmland, community, and justice, these aren't just words. They are values worth fighting for, no matter the cost. And so, the story continues, not just mine, but that of every landowner who refuses to let greed and power overshadow the rights and dreams of ordinary people.